Your live interactive coverage with CBS Austin News begins now.
By convening great minds from Texas and across the nation, we can work together to find the path forward to ensure that Texas and America remain the freest places on earth. And this conference is made possible by the generous support of our sponsors, fellow combatants in the battle for freedom that is waged in the state legislatures across this country and in the halls of Congress itself. And you'll see their names on the screens during today's lunch and in the lobby. And so please help me in thanking our sponsors who helped put this event on. But as we gather for a few days and for this lunch of fellowship and food and fight for freedom, let us first take a moment to bless our food. It's a custom that's really important to us here at TPPF. And today we have the distinct honor of having Chairman Brad Buckley join us. As he is making his way to stage, I'll do a brief intro. Chairman Buckley is currently serving his third term in Texas House of Representatives, where he represents HD 54, which includes Bell County, just north of here in Central Texas. He was first elected in 2018 and was the Texas House Republican Caucus's Freshman of the Year. And he currently serves as the chair of Public Education and the chair of the Select Committee on Educational Opportunity and Enrichment. A native Texan, Representative Buckley was born and raised in rural Bell County. He is a proud fighting Texas Aggie, which maybe is why I invited him to give our invocation to start off. He received his bachelor's degree and his doctorate in veterinary medicine from A&M, and after graduating, returned to his hometown to open up a veterinary practice. Representative Buckley and his wife live on their ranch in Salado, where they maintain a cow-calf operation and raise and train Western performance horses. Please help me welcome the wonderful Chairman Brad Buckley.
Thank you very much. Will you join me in prayer? Almighty God, we are thankful to be here today in your presence and in the presence of so many who've made it their life's work to serve the people of Texas. As we gather to celebrate, learn, and make plans, I ask that you give us both joy and wisdom in our efforts, and that we will always seek to do what is right in your eyes. Bless the food being served today and the hands that prepared it. I pray that every word spoken here today would honor and glorify you. In Christ's name I pray, amen. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chairman Buckley. Please enjoy your lunch. We will begin the program in just a few moments. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please continue to enjoy your lunch, but I'd like to get started with the program now. We have a lot to cover, and of course, we have our keynote coming up. So Doug Deason, if you could sit down, please. All right, so we're going to quiet down for just a second because I would like to take a moment to recognize some of our special guests that have joined us today. Of course, I would like to start with my bosses, our TPF board. You can take my seat, Doug. It's all yours. Our TPF board of directors. So, of course, we have the wonderful Doug Deason with us here today. We have the wonderful Stacy Hawk with us today. We have, yeah, there we go, Stacy. We have our founder and our chairman emeritus, Dr. Jim Leiniger, and his better half, Cecilia, with us here today. Chaz Neely has ventured to the UT campus away from the warm arms of A&M to be with us here today. So thank you for being here, Chaz. Vim Head is here as well. Don Bennett is here. And of course, our former chairman, Tim Lyles, I saw him walking around is here. And you know, Tim came to me late last year and said that he needed to step back from being chairman. I was like, oh my God, what do we do? But luckily, our new board chairman, Kyle Stallings, is here today. And we're letting everyone know for the first time that Kyle Stallings is the new board chair of TPF, and really grateful for him stepping in the breach. I did promise Kyle it wouldn't be forever, but he's going to do it for a little while. And of course, we have a lot of elected officials and legislators with us today, and so I'd like to take a moment to recognize them. It's quite the list, so if you'll just allow me to get through it, and then we'll thank them. Obviously, we have Senator Kevin Sparks and Senator Hall with us here today. Yeah, we'll do each group. How about that? And then, of course, our wonderful House members. Of course, we have Representative Brad Buckley, Representative Shaheen, Representative Hayes is here. I saw him. Representative Tepper from Lubbock is here. Representative Bumgarner, Representative DeRazio, Representative Cunningham, Representative Slauson, and Representative Carrie Isaac is here as well. Can you please thank them? There's Carrie. From the 12th Court of Appeals, we have Chief Justice James Worthen here today, who told me earlier this is his 20th policy conference at TPPF. There he is. And he's suddenly made national news, but our State Board of Education Chair, Aaron Kinsey, was just here. So congratulations to Aaron, who just pulled $8.5 billion out of BlackRock. I told Aaron if he had to go do a news hit, that's fine. We would thank him for him. And of course, who we'll hear from in just a few moments, the wonderful Governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, is here as well. All right, and I'd also like to recognize the many great young adults and members of our TPPF Liberty Leadership Council are here with us today. We have 8 council chapters and more than 200 total members throughout every corner of Texas engaged in the fight for good policy, not only here in Austin, but most importantly in their home communities. So would any LLC young professional please stand so we can applaud you for being involved and being in the arena with us. There you are. You know, every year the age cutoff for Liberty Leadership Council raises with my age, so it's now at 42. So we'll just keep it going because I want to be with the young kids. All right, did I miss anyone? The worst part about this is when I'm calling out names, but did I miss anyone? If I did, I'm so sorry. Okay, all right, good. All right, great job, Sam. Do what? Oh, yes, there we go. Yes, Councilwoman, yes. How's it going? All right. So the seeds of freedom were planted many years before the first shots of the Texas Revolution were even fired. In 1828, Mexican General Manuel Mayer y Terán was sent north to report on the conditions in the Mexican frontier province of Texas, an area in which Americans had been invited to settle. And what the general found alarmed him. He reported back to Mexico City, "I'm warning you to take timely measures, for Texas could throw the whole nation into revolution." And what possibly could have alarmed the general so much? He said, "The Texans," he wrote, "honorable and dishonorable alike, travel with their political constitution in their pockets, demanding the privileges, authority, and officers which such a constitution guarantees. You know, carrying a pocket constitution is still a Texas habit. I actually have mine here. Jerome makes sure I have it on me every day. Maybe some of you have yours as well. But it's important because a people fully conscious of their rights and demanding those rights is a people difficult to govern and impossible to subdue. And the general was proven right 8 years later when the Mexican dictator Santa Anna ignored his counsel and sought to strip the Texans of their rights. But the Texans, a nation of men and women with their political constitution in their pockets, fought back, and the rest is history. In fact, the Alamo flag that we honor today bears the year 1824, the year of the Constitution, the rights under it for which the original Texans fought. And I share this with you today because we are the stewards of Texas. We are the inheritors and defenders of what we won in that desperate passage of 1836. And that revolution then is deeply relevant now, 188 years later. And I would argue perhaps even more relevant than it has ever been in the lifetime of anyone in this room. Like the original Texans, we too face an autocratic regime with increasing disregard for the Constitution and the promises made under it. Today, that regime is in Washington, D.C., not Mexico City, although the regime in Mexico City is hostile to Texas as well, although in some very different ways. And we're called upon to resist in that same spirit, not the same means, but in the same spirit of our Texan is what animates Texas Public Policy Foundation, and I know it's what animates each and every one of you. And it is what brings us here today at our second annual Texas Policy Summit. So I would say the greatest gathering of Texas patriotism and Texas spirit since the last time that Sam Houston dined alone. Because the hard news, the news we all know, is that the challenges to Texas are greater than ever. The regime in Washington, D.C. is determined to force our border open and to subdue us to its unconstitutional dictates and render Texas and all states nothing more than mere names on a map, administrative units without a history or heritage, a mere tax farm. And that regime in D.C. has turned our southern border into an international access point for the entire world. We are flooded, not just with refugees seeking asylum, but a wave containing military men from China, the Middle East, and other places, and criminals and gang members looking to set up shop in America, and the victims they bring with them of human trafficking, men, women, and children sold for forced labor and commercial sex. And this is carried out by the criminal cartels of Mexico, aided and abetted by the Mexican government, who use the people they smuggle as mules, bringing deadly drugs like fentanyl into our country. And the profit from smuggling has corrupted the country to the highest level, leaving ordinary Mexicans living in a world of uncertainty and fear. But Mexico matters to Texas, because when Mexico is stable and free, Texas prospers. And when Mexico is unstable and increasingly unfree like it is today, then Texans are under threat and Texas must act. And that's why I'm proud today to announce to you that the Texas Public Policy Foundation is blazing a trail of action in, with, and for Mexico, Texas-Mexico relations, and U.S.-Mexico policy. We've been leading the way for a half-decade now, inspiring dramatic change at the state and federal levels, and engaging within Mexico itself, all for our singular goal of securing and safeguarding our own Lone Star State. So right now, you're the first to learn that this foundation is establishing the Double Eagle Alliance. It's a binational initiative to promote security for Texas, and its essential prerequisite, liberty for Mexico. And our courageous partners in Mexico are with us here today, the Patria Unida Foundation, and we are excited to lead the way with them in this tremendous and transformative work. And so I'd like to quickly ask our friends from Mexico, Alice Galvan and Humberto Lopez, to please stand and be recognized. So it's easy for me to sit up here and say some things I'm saying, but Alice and Humberto, and you see their son with them, is the reason they do this, are in Mexico. doing and saying the same things and fighting for the liberty of their people. And this alliance would not exist without their efforts, so thank y'all. Because we know that the Lone Star shines in every direction, and it illuminates the landscape well south of the Rio Grande. In fact, it's been said that you can measure a man's virtues by his enemies. And judging by the level of hate that Texas receives, by the regimes in D.C. and Mexico City, our virtues are tremendous. And our virtues are tremendous because we are virtuous people with increasingly virtuous and effective policies. In fact, a few weeks back, don't judge me, but I was reading the New York Times, expressing wonder. You got to read everything, got to be well read. But I'm going to read to you this headline. Republicans in Texas, the most populous and wealthiest conservative state, might decide that the state needs to move even further to the right. Imagine that. Having seen conservative policies at work, property tax relief, on border, on education, criminal justice, energy, and countless other spheres, the Texans might decide they want more of that. They want more of those policies. And they want more of the political class that listens to them and gives them those outcomes. And they want more of that brand of governance. And they want more of the things that make Texas different, special, prosperous, and free. And all of this is tremendously exciting. And I hope you're excited. And I'm excited to see the men and women of the 89th Texas legislature come into view. And I'm excited to see that legislature coalesce. And I'm really excited to see what they will accomplish. Because I know this. For all the challenges and all the division within conservative ranks across the past year, these are the men and women who will deliver for Texas in 2025. They will continue to secure our border. They will continue to challenge D.C.'s tyrannical claims to rule. They will continue to provide us more tax relief. And they will ensure that Texas is the best place in the country to have and raise a family. And when they do that work for Texas families, this foundation will be there right there working with them. And this conservative majority in the legislature will help us get there, and they'll help us do something else too. Something very important that's been working on for decades. And they will finally deliver school choice for Texans. So they'll get all of this done, to borrow a phrase from a long ago president who's considered liberal in his time, but probably is considered conservative today, not because it's easy, but because it is hard. And the hard things are the ones most worth doing. And above all, the hard job ahead for our legislators is worth doing because we know that conservative policies work. We've seen them in action. Conservative policies are improving lives. They are defeating authoritarian regimes, and they honor the dignity of every individual and their rights. And following the example set by those who first fought for Texas liberty almost 2 centuries ago, I know that this legislature will get things done in the halls of our Capitol next session. Because Texans deserve no less and they expect no less. Because we never forget, at our core, Texas is a nation. And I'm excited and I'm optimistic. And I'm sure if a modern day Mayor Turan shows up from Washington, D.C., I expect his report would be exceptionally pessimistic. But we also understand that optimism is not enough. We have to fight harder and smarter for good ideas to prevail. So how do we do that? How do we fight harder and smarter? Well, energy. Energy is the heartbeat and engine of our great state. It's something we need every day, and it's a major driver of our economy. And it's something that the Biden administration and its petty green tyrants are eager to snuff out. But we're not going down in Texas. In fact, we're hitting back, and TPPF is hitting back in some new ways. And so I'm really excited today to announce the launch of our new energy initiative to complement our life-powered work, the National Center for Energy Analytics, or NCEA. You know, as the Apostle Paul told us in Colossians 2:8, and my good friend Representative Allerson reminds me often, see to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy. And my friends, we all know that the green agenda and narrative is an exceedingly hollow and deceptive philosophy, and yet it is broadcast far and wide with misleading information and manipulated data. And several years ago, we launched our Fueling Freedom Project, an initiative to counter this philosophy. And Fueling Freedom was transformed into today's Life Powered to win those hearts and minds and raise America's energy IQ. But we realized that we had to do more. We had to grow our footprint, and we had to provide answers at a national and unprecedented scale. Because those answers weren't coming from anywhere. They definitely weren't coming from Washington, D.C. The green movement is, if not scientific, extremely well coordinated. And Life Powered gave us our initial ammunition and continues to provide that today. But we needed heavy artillery to truly upend this narrative. And that's where NCEA comes in. The NCEA will bring together policy folks and industry folks, sure, but most importantly, they're bringing together the scientists and academics who are brave enough to stand in the gap and face the tide of pseudo-scientific, pseudo-religious, hollow, and deceptive green agenda. And together, we will step up against this Malthusian movement of the left to destroy access to affordable and reliable energy across the globe, because we know the surest way to flourish, the surest way out of poverty for billions of people is access to affordable and reliable energy. And so we're excited to have a brilliant and keen mind leading NCEA. In fact, I'll introduce him here to you shortly. But I want you to please turn your attention to the screens for a short video on this new initiative. Because this is an initiative guided by clear principles: freedom, prosperity, and opportunity. And it's an initiative that is thinking big because Texans think big. And because Texas is a nation, we don't just face our future, we make it. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to present our National Center for Energy Analytics.
You're talking about zero carbon emissions, no use of fossil fuels.
That is the goal.
This climate crisis is a fossil fuel crisis.
Why not use the solar and wind to replace the fossil fuel burning plants that are putting all that stuff up there in the first place?
Fossil fuels continue to make up at least 82% of the world's total energy consumption in 2022, causing greenhouse gas emissions to climb by 0.8%.
Energy is the most important resource in the world. Without it, there is no healthcare, no education, no industry, no quality of life, no prosperity, and no freedom.
You don't think about it. You turn the light on. Your computer works. The food is inexpensive. It's because energy was made easy, affordable, and reliable. The world runs, whether we like it or not, on hydrocarbons.
But to ensure access to reliable, affordable energy, we must have accurate and credible information.
Since you have to build machines from materials, and materials and machines always wear out, then you're always replacing it. It's not renewable.
Some have been pushing for a massive transition to green energy that would not only cost trillions of dollars, but isn't founded on the reality of our current technology or best science.
Everywhere in the world, we've increased the quantity of energy provided by wind and sun. The cost of electricity on those grids has gone up. So Germany and England are much further down the path of the Green New Deal. Electricity costs have more than tripled there.
America is at a crossroads. Do we go down the path of wishful thinking and virtue signaling? Or do we chart a course for energy security, economic prosperity, and individual liberty?
The United States has passed legislation that is the largest quantity of spending in an industrial domain in the history of the country since World War II to effect an energy transition. The Inflation Reduction Act is the Green New Deal. That is a big deal.
America must stand together for practical solutions that ensure access to affordable, reliable energy.
In the energy analytics world, there are no solutions, there are only better questions. So the essence of creating a new center, the National Center for Energy Analytics, is to try to create a home for an epicenter for scholarship, analysis, and publicity about facts that arise from asking the right questions. If we raise the cost of energy to society, we raise the cost of everything. If we degrade the reliability of energy, we degrade the reliability of everything. A future world where energy is more expensive and less available is a world in poverty.
The fight to preserve and protect our way of life is now.
All right, so when I had this bright idea that we needed more and we had to get more academic in our scholarship for this, there's only one person I could think of. He's that good-looking guy with the great haircut in the video you just saw. But there's one man, Mark Mills. Mark is currently a Distinguished Senior Fellow at TPPF and now the Director of NCEA. He's also a contributing editor at the City Journal, a faculty fellow at Northwestern University's McCormick School of Engineering, and a co-founding partner of Montrose Lane, which is an energy fund. He writes frequently. You've probably seen his publications in the Wall Street Journal and Forbes and TechCrunch, amongst others. And I got him from our good friends at the Manhattan Institute, where he was a senior fellow for many years, and where his videos often had millions of views because of his great work. And he's also a recent author. He wrote a book, The Cloud Revolution, How the Convergence of New Technologies Will Unleash the New Economic Boom. And, of course, The Roaring '20s, which rose to #1 in Amazon's business planning and forecasting category. He also served in the White House Science Office under President Reagan and is one of the most incredible and bright minds when it comes to energy and energy information and transition. There's no one that knows this stuff better, and we're so pleased to have him join our team. The only thing I can say about him is he is Canadian, so please be kind. But please welcome the wonderful Mark Mills.
Well, I'm an American now, too. I'm both. I identify as both, less often Canadian these days. I won't go into Canadian politics. Greg, thank you for that stem wine of an introduction. I appreciate that very much. And I need to thank all of my new colleagues at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, the board, the trustees, the supporters, frankly, for the privilege and honor of leading this new national initiative. Texas-inspired, nationally directed. In fact, in that vein, I need to also thank Governor Abbott. Everybody in this room needs to thank Governor Abbott. You know why. He has inspired leaders. He's a true leader. He's led other governors. He's led policymakers in Washington, some of them willingly, some of them kicking and screaming, as they say, in the right direction on so many vital issues, not just energy. But permit me to take a few minutes, just a few minutes, to highlight a few facts about why we've launched this new National Center for Energy Analytics. Our center is not a political organization, but it is an organization that was made necessary because of politics. The politics do matter. I don't need to tell anyone in this room why politics have made energy so important. There's never been a more critical time for sober-minded, fact-based, hyperbole-free perspectives on energy. The entirely partisan, and it was entirely partisan, Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 was, after its passage, proudly touted as the Green New Deal finally implemented. It's the biggest ever program for so-called climate tech, or as one headline put it, it's Christmas for climate tech. It's no exaggeration to say that the Inflation Reduction Act is modern history's most ambitious federal program directed at industrial policy. And because energy is society's foundational industry, the scales are really high. It's obvious, but I'll restate it, and as Greg said, energy is vital for everything. Everything that makes civilization possible, everything that enables human flourishing. Think, for example, obviously, of the machines that move people, that move goods, that move food, that move information. Each year, the world spends thousands of billions of dollars building all those kinds of machines that use energy. They are the engines of economies everywhere. But to put the energy realities into sort of a context that Washington understands, that everybody understands, in monetary context, every $1 billion spent building cars leads to about $100 million of energy purchases a year. Or every $1 billion spent building aircraft leads to over $200 million of energy purchases every year. Or every $1 billion spent building data centers, that leads to over $300 million of energy purchases each year. And as artificial intelligence engines are added to that, to over $800 million in energy purchases. That last fact tells you everything you need to know about why the tech community is involved in the energy debates. But we are now on a path to implement policies that will cause trouble for both reliability and costs of energy. It fully implemented the Inflation Reduction Act and its appropriations, its loans, and its mandates that will lead to some $2 trillion in spending to try and radically alter the energy status quo. That level of spending is unprecedented in modern history. In fact, it rivals the total amount spent in inflation-adjusted terms by the United States to prosecute World War II. That spending is directed, of course, at the pursuit of the so-called energy transition, to eliminate the use of the hydrocarbons that supply 80% of America's and the world's energy. All this spending, it bears noting, is not in the pursuit of meeting growth or promoting human flourishing, but instead to replace existing infrastructures. Given the scales and the stakes, we need to be asking the right questions about all of this effort, all the spending. Questions like, how can that kind of spending not lead to inflation again? Or what will we do about the geopolitical risks and supply chains that shift away from domestic oil and gas and instead to suppliers of energy materials in China, in Africa, and ironically also in the Middle East? Or are the claims of future costs for favored energy transition technologies anchored in reality, or are they just aspirations? Or finally, are the consequences of pursuing, just attempting to pursue the so-called energy transition sustainable economically, politically, environmentally? Sometimes the questions answer themselves. Often, however, the answers are not obvious or they're not widely known. That's why we're so fortunate to have 9 impressive scholars already joined and 6 world-class advisors already join us to launch this new National Center for Energy Analytics. We're all looking forward to engaging these debates. And again, I thank Texas Public Policy Foundation and Texas for the honor of mounting this new national effort. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mark. We're really excited for what NCA will do and how it will complement our already stellar energy work. Before I get on to my introduction of our keynote speaker, I did realize I forgot 2 of our wonderful state reps. Representatives Terry Leo Wilson and Jane Lopez are here today, so I'm sorry I didn't recognize you, but thank you all for being here. But of course, we wouldn't be talking about any of this today if we didn't have our governor leading the way. Over a generation ago, the historian James Flexner coined the phrase, the indispensable man, to describe George Washington, the man without whom no victory would have been possible. And so I'm going to appropriate that phrase today to describe another great American, Greg Abbott, the indispensable man of our modern Texas, without whom all the achievements and promises under the Lone Star would have been impossible. Wherever you look, wherever you see conservative policy achievement, you see the leadership of our governor. He's put education freedom front and center on the Texas agenda. He's seen the way through with real property tax relief. And he's put Texas forces on the border and dared a feckless federal government to do something about it. When we look at all the state governors in America today, when we look at all the chief executives in America today, Greg Abbott is in the first rank. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our governor, the governor of the great state of Texas, the Honorable Greg Abbott.
Thank y'all very much. Give it up for my favorite Aggie, Greg Sindelar. Proud to be with you. Really looking forward to Thanksgiving next year. So, I mean, if you go back, you know, one thing that's important is you have governors who live up to promises they make. One thing that many of you do not remember is that from the dais in the Texas House of Representatives during a State of the State address, I promised that as governor, I would reunite the Texas A&M football game. And now that is happening. But I want to talk to you about the successes of TPPF. Obviously, it's a public policy organization. There's one thing to be involved in public policy, But public policy unto itself is really kind of meaningless unless it is actually translated into action and into laws. And if you look at what has happened over the course of just the past 1 year, I think more has been done that was set forth initially by TPPF this past year than ever in the history of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. So much so, I cannot squeeze it all into a 4-hour speech. But let me mention just a few. One thing that was mentioned that needs to be expanded upon is what was achieved during this last session concerning property tax cuts. Remember, it was at TPPF at your headquarters last year when I was giving a speech saying that I was fighting for the policy that was designed by the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and that is to put our independent school district property taxes on a pathway to ending those property taxes here in the state of Texas. Working with TPPF and its leaders, that's one thing that I advanced in during the regular session, special session, and another special session. We finally got an $18 billion property tax cut that puts us on the pathway but doesn't get us there. And so what I am committed to doing, and I looked over here and saw Helen Kerwin, and we got Brad Buckley here, and we got some others here. Listen, I am insisting that we come back once again and ensure that we will continue to cut those property taxes until we get rid of the school property tax rate here in the state of Texas. So this is the part about property taxes that you know that you've been involved in, but it's important that you connect also that it's the policies that you all have been involved in advancing over the past 2 decades that actually led to our ability to provide those substantial property tax cuts. And what I'm talking about are policies that for one, ensures that the state is going to adhere to a very limited spending budget based upon objective criteria that will tie the hands of the legislature from being able to spend money. And what that means is that when we have times of plenty, like we did this last session, it means that money will be available for us to provide it toward property tax cuts. But again, the money that we had aplenty this past session would not have been there had it not been for the policies that TPPF helped to instill. Policies such as making sure we maintain low tax rates. A line that I use with businesses that are thinking about coming here, and candidly, if the deal was not cinched before I use this line, whenever anybody hears this line, they say, by God, I'm going to Texas. And it's this. We not only don't have an income tax, we despise income taxes so much that we passed a constitutional amendment ensuring no property tax would occur in the state of Texas in the lifetime of anybody here, because it's going to be more than the lifetime of anybody here before you have 2/3 of the people of the state of Texas who would say, yes, I want a property tax. So in Texas, we put the nail in the coffin of an income tax in the state of Texas. And then you look at regulatory reform. Then I'm going to come back and tie it back to the money that we had available. Look at regulatory reform. The regulatory reform that has been advanced by TPPF from the beginning has made doing business in Texas so much better than ever before. There was a tweet put out by Giga Texas just 2 days ago that I retweeted and put my own comment to, but it echoes what was said by Elon Musk a couple of years ago. It was April of 2020 when Elon Musk came to first visit with me about the possibility of Tesla building a gigafactory here in the state of Texas. And Elon said that he needed to have it done in 18 months. I don't know if there's anybody here who's ever built a house in Austin, Texas. But if you, I know some people, if you build a house in Austin, Texas, it takes more than 18 months. But what Eli needed to do was to not only build a mile-long factory, he needed to have that mile-long factory have the intricacies of a gigafactory, and then needed to have it scaled and up to speed so that they would be able to roll vehicles off in 18 months. And as Tesla tweeted just a couple of days ago, they were able to complete this project in Texas in only 16 months. A project, the largest construction project in America at that speed since World War II, a project that is larger than the Pentagon, was able to be done in the state of Texas because of our regulatory environment that moves at the speed of business. Before Elon Musk owned Twitter, he posted on Twitter that in Texas, he was able to build a gigafactory in 16 months. And in the same time, in California, he would not even have his permits at that time. The key takeaway from what I'm telling you, however, we didn't give any special treatment to Tesla. We provided a Tesla what we provide to any business, large or small, in the state of Texas, and there's a reason for it. One thing that we know in Texas is that when we as a state help businesses succeed, it helps Texas succeed. It makes those businesses more productive, and in turn that leads to greater revenue, not just for them, but also for the state of Texas. And it was because of policies like that that led to such extraordinary revenue that was generated by the state of Texas that led to Texas this past year having a budget surplus of about $35 billion. The largest budget surplus not only has the state of Texas ever had, but it was the largest budget surplus of any governmental entity in the United States of America. And because of policies advanced by TPPF, we know inherently that when we have a budget surplus in Texas, that money does not belong to the state of Texas. It's not going to be used like it is in some other states where they will use it to expand government. Instead, we know that money belongs to the taxpayers of the state of Texas. And that's why we return it to you with the $18 billion property tax cut that we provided. And know this, because business continues to grow and expand rapidly in the state of Texas, is highly likely, as in 99% likely, that we're going to have another very large budget surplus this coming session. And I look forward to working with TPPF and members of the Texas legislature to make sure we deliver another return to taxpayers in the state of Texas with another large property tax cut in our state. But when I talk about the growth of the size of the economy in Texas, let's put this in some context. I'll give you the number first of all. The number is for the year 2022. Texas had a gross domestic product of about $2.3 trillion in just 1 year. Comparatively, so you can understand, there are only 7 countries in the world with an economy larger than Texas. You have obviously the United States, China, India, Japan, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany. And when you look at the way that the Texas economy is growing, and you look at the way that France is not growing as fast as the state of Texas, it's very possible that maybe later on this year, Texas will surpass France and have the 7th largest economy in the entire world. What I recommend that we do whenever that happens is we join together at the headquarters of TPPF and we have a big French fry cook-off celebrating. So the regulatory regime, I want to make sure that I circle back and connect the dot here. I mentioned that we have a regulatory regime that attracts businesses to our state. That does not happen automatically. Think of what happens regulatory-wise in California, New York, Illinois, and places like that. It's the complete opposite of Texas. It's because TPPF has been advancing policies that have led to a far more business-oriented regulatory regime. Let's go back in time. Somebody here may remember the exact year. I cannot remember the exact year, but it was in 2017, I think, when I was speaking to a TPPF conference, and I talked about the struggle of the state of Texas having to take one-shot actions against local governments that were trying to impose regulations that were hindering our economy. One of the laws I had to sign in my very first session as governor in 2015 was a law that overturned a regulation put in place by the city of Denton, where Denton banned fracking. Now think about this. For one, we already have 2 state agencies at least, and federal agencies also that regulate things like oil and gas production. If we have every city and county and other local jurisdiction in the state of Texas regulating oil and gas, everything that you saw about the presentation moments ago about energy independence and the need for it would have been destroyed. Our capability of producing and transferring and moving energy would have been completely undermined. They would have destroyed our economy. But I talked in 2017 not just about having these 1 or 2 laws every year that overrides local governments that are trying to mimic what's going on in San Francisco. I talked at the time that we needed one law across the board that would override all of these local regulations that are trying to copy California-style regulations. Well, it did not take hold at the time. We had to, again, year after year after year, pass laws that overrode local government regulations until less than a year ago. This time last year, it was working its way through committee and eventually passed and reached my desk a law that's, I will say, affectionately known as the Death Star Law. That is a Death Star to local ordinances that try to copy California-style regulations. I am told, I think Dustin Burrows is going to be here tomorrow, who was one of the leaders of getting that passed. And it is the model to be used across the United States of America, especially when we're dealing with a state where we have some cities that are trying so hard to use local government to run businesses, which is antithetical to capitalism here in Texas or the United States of America. Another policy that TPPF worked on, that we worked together and finally passed what is now the strongest law of its effect, and that is we are concerned about the ideology that's being hammered into our kids when they go to our schools and our colleges. And our kids are not learning the core elements that will ensure that they're going to be better qualified to compete against their peers across our country or across the globe. Instead, they're being indoctrinated with ideologies from far-left socialistic-based professors and our universities. And all of that is being used under the umbrella of what seems like is kind of a kind thing. It's called DEI. And DEI is used programmatically to indoctrinate our kids and our universities. And working with TPPF, I signed a law that bans DEI at our universities here in the state of Texas. Doesn't mean that it's working flawlessly. There's some scofflaws out there as we speak right now. Just know this. We're monitoring what our universities are doing and make sure they will be brought into compliance. And knowing what we learn about ways in which they are not in compliance, we'll be looking forward to implementing more compliance measures when we get into the next session to make sure we are holding these universities accountable. And then Greg mentioned what's going on the border. Listen, and I'm going to talk about it, about everything going on, but you need to know how extraordinarily helpful it is to have such a leading public policy organization, not just at the heads of it, but the members of it, to be supportive of the laws that we're working on. You all were supportive of this Senate Bill 4 that's in the courts right now that authorizes the state of Texas to arrest anybody who crosses into our country illegally from another country. You supported funding the wall. You know, candidly, it's unusual to see TPPF come out in favor of funding anything. But so you know how important it is when they support funding the wall and doing more to secure the border. And what's going on the border is nothing short of catastrophic. And, you know, it seems like it's been going on so long. You got to remember this. It was just 4 years ago that we had the lowest illegal border crossings in 45 years. And the reason is because of 4 policies that President Trump put into place. Remain in Mexico, Title 42 policy, the end, catch, and release, and building a border wall. And then remember when Joe Biden took office, he proudly signed executive orders that eliminated all of the policies that Trump had put into place, and he opened the gates to the entire world. And the entire world has taken up Joe Biden on his offer, and we've had people come from more than 150 countries across the globe, and about 9 million people have crossed the border illegally just under the first 3 years of Joe Biden's tenure as President of the United States of America. Many of them extraordinarily dangerous. There's a record number, year after year after year under Joe Biden, a record number of people who are on the terrorist watch list, who are apprehended, some of them by the Texas Department of Public Safety. And know this, if you're on the terrorist watch list, you'll pay extra to the drug cartels so you will not be caught. So if we've caught hundreds under the Biden administration of people who are on the terrorist watch list, how many terrorists are roaming the United States of America as we speak? The answer is no one knows. However, if you saw what FBI Director Wray said last week, he says that based upon what's happened at our southern border, he expects there to be a terroristic attack similar to 9/11. You cannot have the number of people coming across the border who are terrorists and not expect anything different. Also, these rumors that you've heard about Venezuela letting dangerous criminals out of prison to come to America, they're true. And the same thing is true of countries in Central and South America and across the globe, and as well as the number of Chinese that are coming here, and who knows what their intent is when they come here. Because of that, and because Joe Biden is very simply not following the law of the United States of America. You'll remember just a couple of weeks ago, he was telling all of you and all of his fellow Americans that he needed Congress to pass some laws in order for him to have the ability to secure the border. Either A, he was just outright lying to you. B, he had no idea what he was talking about. Or C, all of the above. I think it's all of the above. Let me be clear about something. Congress has already passed laws that give the president every tool that he needs. Laws that existed before Biden became president. And I want you to know these in case you ever engage in a discussion with anybody, well, Biden has to pass something or the Republicans in Congress need to step up and do something. These laws already exist right now. Law number 1 empowers the president, not empowers, it compels, requires the president to deny illegal entry into the United States of America. He's not denying illegal entry. He's aiding and abetting illegal entry. Law number 2 requires the president to mandate that he detain anybody who comes across the border illegally. And coming across the border illegally is defined as this: coming between the ports of entry. There are 28 ports of entry in the state of Texas alone that people could cross and try to seek asylum if that's what they wanted to do. But instead, they're going between ports of entry, sometimes under the bridge, right above them. That is a port of entry. Law number 3 requires the president to build border barriers like border walls, or like the barriers Texas is putting up right now. Joe Biden has done nothing to build any type of border barrier. The only thing he's ever done with border barriers is try to tear down the ones that Texas has put on our border. It's because of these reasons. Because, number 1, we are facing such dangerous situations, and number 2, Joe Biden, through his actions, is violating the laws of the United States of America. That's exactly why I declared our authority under Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution. Texas has a right to defend ourselves, and we will use that authority to declare an invasion and fight back against that invasion. So let me tell you what we're doing. Number 1, Texas is the only state in the history of the United States to build our own border wall. And we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're building the exact same wall that President Trump put up, with one difference. When you look at the miles that Texas has already put up of the Trump border wall and the number of miles that are under construction right now, Texas is adding more of the Trump border wall in Texas than Donald Trump put up in the state of Texas. Number 2, you remember those big orange buoys that we put into the Rio Grande? They were designed by the Border Patrol because they were completely effective at denying illegal entry across the river. And we put them in the river because Joe Biden wouldn't use them. And what do you think Biden did when we put them into the river? He filed a lawsuit to put a stop to it. That lawsuit is working its way through the federal courts and is subject to a en banc, however you want to call it, meaning in the entire court of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is going to be hearing oral arguments on that case in May of this year. But I want you to know, even though Biden has tied this issue up in the courts, those buoys remain in the Rio Grande River as we gather here today. And then there is this island, Fronton Island. Fronton Island is an island in the Rio Grande between Mexico and Texas, and is many times the size of this room. That island is owned by the state of Texas, but it was kind of non-useful because it was filled with nothing other than cane and brush and trees and shrubs that were packed far closer together than the audience is sitting together here today. But the cartels found a use for it. The cartels found that they could smuggle people as well as contraband to that island from Mexico, and then when they saw clearance, they could move it from that island onto the state of Texas. So I told the Texas National Guard, I want you to go seize that island and purge it from any cartel activity, and that's exactly what they did. And then when they accomplished that, they built a land bridge from the state of Texas onto that island, and then they used bulldozers when they got to the island to completely flatten that island of any of that cane and trees and brush and things like that, so that it could never again be used by the cartels or by illegal immigrants as a way station. And now that island is about as clear as the floor on which I'm sitting here today. And nothing there except for one thing. The flag of the great state of Texas is on that island. So that was done by our National Guard. The National Guard has played a pivotal role in what's going on. There are thousands of National Guard on duty as we gather here for lunch. And the main task that they undertake is to build mile after mile after mile of razor wire border barrier to deny illegal entry into the United States. In fact, they have repelled and turned back to Mexico more than 100,000 people. And they're adding more as we speak today. And it was the National Guard who are professionals at building this razor wire. When I saw the way that Joe Biden was violating the laws of the United States of America in Shelby Park in Eagle Pass, Texas, that's when I ordered the Texas National Guard, you go seize that 50-acre park and wire it shut and ensure that no one will pass through that park again. And that's exactly what they did. When the sun rose the next morning, it was wired shut. I was there. You may have seen this on TV. I was there a couple of weeks ago with President Trump, and he said he had never seen anything that had been wired as shut as this was. And get this. The reason why we needed to do this was ground zero for illegal border crossings. You would have 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people a day crossing there illegally. If you look over the past 10 days, there haven't been thousands of people crossing the border there, or hundreds or even dozens. On average, over the past 10 days, there have been 3 people crossing the border at that location. And they were arrested by the Texas Department of Public Safety. Our ongoing need for National Guard on the border is so prolific. Texas has another first that no other state has ever done. We are now building our own Army base to house 2,300 National Guard on the border just outside of Eagle Pass, Texas. And so that brings me to the law that I signed this past special session. We tried it in the regular. We tried in some other special sessions. It took 4 special sessions. But we finally got a law crafted in a way to be able to withstand legal challenge, be able to withstand the arguments that will be made, and that is that, well, the Texas law contradicts the Arizona decision that was issued by the United States Supreme Court back in 2012, and hence should be overturned. We found ways to try to craft that law to be consistent with the dissent that was wrote in that Arizona case by Justice Scalia. And this is a case that went to a federal district judge that we knew was going to be ruling against us. And then the case was appealed to the Federal Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, where they kind of put everything on halt as they awaited to have oral arguments. While they put everything on halt, which allowed Texas to be able to enforce the law, that was appealed up to the United States Supreme Court. Yesterday, the United States Supreme Court lifted the stay and said Texas can enforce its law against illegal immigration and arrest people coming across the border illegally. But like watching a tennis match, the ball goes back and forth across the net constantly. Later on last night, the Fifth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals said, not so fast. The Federal Court of Appeals put a stay on it. They had oral arguments on it this morning, and they are completed with those oral arguments. They've not issued an opinion on it, but they have kept the stay in place. But know this, what they have stayed is the Texas enforcement of SB 4. But even without SB 4, Texas has the legal authority to arrest people coming across the razor wire barriers on our border, and we will continue to use our arrest authority and arrest people coming across the border illegally. The Texas Department of Public Safety has already arrested more than 40,000 people who have come across the border illegally. And they will continue to use every tool and strategy they can to arrest people, jail these people crossing the border, and we will continue to build those border barriers, keep the buoys in the water, build a Texas border wall, doing everything we can to protect the sovereignty of the state of Texas and the United States of America. One last topic. A little bit about school choice. So, school choice is an issue that I know has been embraced by TPPF for a long time. And sometimes it takes a while for policies to ferment and lead to a time when it's right to make sure that all the pieces come together, that we can make a change, which is what public policy organizations like this are all about. They're about making changes that improve our state, and clearly empowering parents with their God-given right to make the decision in the best interest of their child is a good policy for the state of Texas. It also leads to improved education results. And it's not a mystery. You see it in the corporate world. You see it in the athletic world. You see it in every sphere, that when you see competition, you see better results. And that same concept applies in the education sphere also. So we knew going into this last regular session that school choice was going to be a top-tier issue. An issue that I used as my power as governor to make an emergency item in the legislative session. So I came out with no ambiguity about either where I stood or what I expected. If the governor put something on the emergency item list, that means this is something that must pass, and if it doesn't pass, there's going to be challenges to deal with. And when we put that out there, we embarked on multi-level strategies to try to get this across the finish line. Obviously, it requires a legislative strategy. And I'll get ahead of myself here, but the key person who was designing the legislation that came up for a vote finally back in the fourth special session was Brad Buckley. But he was involved from the very beginning. I cannot thank Brad Buckley enough for everything he did. But while he was working on it and designing it, tinkering with it, cajoling members, working on educating members, all that kind of stuff, there was something going on in a different sphere. And that was a campaign across the state of Texas to win the hearts and minds of our fellow Texans. And Mandy Drogan and I spent many nights together on the road as we went from one campaign event to another that would have about sometimes as many people as there are in this room here today, sometimes even larger than that, of concerned parents showing up, begging, pleading, explaining why they desperately need Texas to deliver school choice in the state of Texas. And it led to some meaningful changes. And you need to see the progression of what happened. What happened is, early on in the session, there's a test vote that takes place. The vote was on what's called the Herrero Amendment, named after State Representative Herrero, and it basically is an amendment to take away all the bureaucratic legalese of it. It's a test vote about whether or not there are votes there to support school choice. What month did Herrero Amendment come up? March. So this month, last year, the Herrero Amendment came up. And at that time, there were 52 Republicans who voted against the Herrero Amendment, meaning those 52 Republicans showed their hands that they supported school choice in the state of Texas. know this. That's the most votes against the Herrero Amendment ever. So that was significant movement. Just by the time the campaign trips that Mandy and I had made, I think beginning in January, something like that, from that time until the Herrero vote was taken, we had moved the needle in getting more and more Republicans to be able to support school choice in the state of Texas. So remember, there's 150 House members. To get school choice passed, we need 76 votes. We got 52 votes in favor of school choice with the Herrero Amendment. After that is when we got to the point when we had these discussions about there are ways to get this done. One way is just for the members to pass a bill, get it done, and get it over with. Something they should do for this very important reason. And that is, this wasn't some mysterious vote where, gosh, who knows where my constituents stand on it. This was candidly where a lot of Republicans were saying, listen, I can't support it because my constituents don't support it. That was just flat out wrong. We know it was wrong, not based on any poll. We knew it was wrong because when every member of the Texas House of Representatives was last elected, they were first chosen and voted on by the members in the Republican Party who voted in the primary. And what we had was a breakdown by House district in every 150 House districts in the state of Texas where the primary vote in the Republican Party was. And in district after district after district, there was 85%, sometimes up to 90% of the Republicans who voted in that primary said, we want school choice on that ballot initiative. So any Republican House member who was voting against school choice was voting against the voice of the Republicans who voted in that primary. And so I knew that what I was fighting for was far more than just a vote on a policy of school choice. I was fighting to give power and voice to all the Republicans in all these districts who had a state representative who was fighting against them. They needed somebody fighting for them, for their clearly articulated desire to have school choice, and there are plenty of reasons for it. Put aside the bullying that could take place, put aside the fact that there are some schools like Houston Independent School District where they had failed not once, twice, 3 times, or even 4 times, but 5 times in a row. How much do you have to fail before you give parents an opportunity to choose a different school for your child? Are these crazy stories? They're not stories, they're facts about how in the Dallas Independent School District they have a resource guide for parents. Not about how their kid can do better in school, not about how you deal with modern math or write better, but a resource guide instead on how children in their school district can change their genders. What in the world? If you're a parent in that situation, should you be trapped within a school district that's focusing on issues like that? Of course not. And then there was a situation in Lewisville, Texas, where you had a man teacher in the high school going to school dressed as a woman in a dress and high heels and makeup. Do you think those kids in that class, when they see that teacher dressed like that in front of them at the chalkboard, do you think they're really paying attention the way they need to pay attention to the math they're learning, or whatever the case may be? A more important question. If you are a parent in that school whose child has that teacher, should you be compelled by the state of Texas to keep your child in that school? Of course not. But the way Texas law works right now is you are compelled because you are not given any other choice to take your child to a different school. That is wrong, and we are going to change that by finally passing school choice in the state of Texas. So going back, when the test vote was taken this month last year, there were 52 Republicans who supported school choice. When Brad Buckley's bill finally came up for a test vote in the Texas House in November, in the fourth called special session, the number of Republicans voting in favor of school choice had moved from 52 to 63, an increase of 11. But as I had made clear to the entire state of Texas, if it does not pass, we are going to campaign on this issue. And we are going to run candidates who support the will of the people of the state of Texas, and we are going to win. And if you look at the numbers now, the numbers are this. They went from 52 school choice this month last year, 63 in November, and now after the first round of primary elections, counting who won those elections and the runoffs where both of the candidates in the runoffs supported, we are now at 74 votes in favor of school choice in the state of Texas. Which is good, but 74 does not equal 76 even under modern math. We need 2 more votes to pass school choice in the state of Texas. If you look at the way that the primary vote turned out and who's in the runoff and what the percentages look like, we should be able to win that. It's kind of like, as TPPF knows, I always give a football analogy. And if there's any surprise, it's kind of that I waited this long to get to a football analogy. It's kind of like a football game when you're behind by 2 points with time running out, and you send your field goal kicker out there to kick a field goal, score 3 points, and win the game. Sometimes it goes through the goalpost, sometimes it doesn't. What every head coach knows, they don't want to have to rely on their field goal kicker to win the football game. With all due respect, I'm sure there's some former field goal kickers here today. We don't want to have to rely upon a field goal kicker. We want to make sure that when these runoffs are over at the end of May, that we are ahead by more than 2 points, or 3 points, or 4 points. We want to make sure that we send a message and we send to the Capitol Republicans who represent the values of their voters and will be elected in May to go vote in the Capitol and work with all of us to make sure we pass school choice this next session. But to be clear, we would not be on the threshold of success if it were not for TPPF. I come here today with a heart of gratitude for everybody here and everything that you've done, because we are sitting on success after success, but we know that we will transform generations to come when we succeed at school choice. To be able to get that done, this is not a time for you to sit on the sidelines and applaud the success that we've achieved. This is a time when all of us must come together, redouble our efforts, knowing that the final vote count is going to be determined by what happens in just 2 months from now. This is the last big push to get across the finish line. If ever there was a time when a public policy organization was going to go all in to make sure that one of its 4 most important policies is going to get passed, this is that time. Your involvement, your engagement, your activism, your voter turnout, whatever you can do is needed now more than ever. And after Election Day in May, we will all stand up and celebrate the fact not just that we passed school choice, but that you made a difference in the life of a child in the great state of Texas. Thank you all. God bless you all, and God bless the great state of Texas.
That was awesome. All right, so thank you so much, Governor. I can assure you we are all in. We're with you, and we're so grateful to have you leading the way. And we're so grateful for our legislators and all the work that they're doing and being in the arena and taking these hard votes. And so appreciate all of that. We have one quick final little surprise before we go, and that is to recognize a deserving member of our TPPF staff. And the governor has agreed to help me recognize the staff member. And so every year since 2019, we've given out the Texas Patriots Excellence and Achievement Award, made possible by our longtime supporters Joe and Olga San Miguel. And as many of you know, Joe passed away just this last year, and he loved being part of this presentation, and Joe is greatly, greatly missed. But we know that he will always be with us in spirit, and we're proud to carry on the legacy that he and Olga have created to honor the accomplishments and dedication of a TPPF staff member who has significantly moved our mission forward in the last year. And this year's Texas Patriot Excellence and Achievement Award goes to none other than Mandy Drogan. So Mandy, you'll please come up. While she's coming up. So while she's taking off her name tag for pictures, you know, Mandy is one of the top education reform leaders in Texas and has experience managing grassroots, marketing, election. Obviously, she spent months on the road with Governor Abbott and has been a tireless advocate for every single child in this state. And, you know, when we hired Mandy about 2 years ago now, I said, man, we need somebody like Mandy Drogan. And I said, wait, we should go hire Mandy Drogan. And the change that she has made, not only in TPPF, but for the kids of Texas, is just tremendous. And most importantly, the reason she does it, she lives here.